tonight.
Oh, really? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
roll call.
Counselor Bowie?
Here.
Counselor Bickford?
Here.
Counselor Ward? Here. Counselor Pomelo?
Here.
Counselor La Rochelle?
Here.
Counselor Mason is excused. Counselor Lunt?
Here.
First item, Twyla.
Is under public hearing, the 2012-13 capital improvement budget.
I'd like to open that public hearing. Anybody has any interest in speaking on the capital improvement budget, please come to the podium. Dot.
I did print off the capital improvement budget this afternoon. Haven't had a chance to read it, but how in God's name do you plan on paying for it?
We'll continue on a public hearing, then we can,
Address that.
if you'd like to, go ahead.
Yep. This is just a improvement list of things that we think as department heads and as a operations to what we feel needs to be replaced and supported. Does not mean that the council's going to support that or the department heads. We try to live within our means. We make recommendations of what we should be trying to do and stay ahead of, but it does not mean it's going to be fully supported. So we look at it every year, and we may end up pushing things back. So.
I know, and I've been to all of the workshops and everything, and I see the library does more with less. I see Public Works does more with less. I see Villa Brooks at the Parks Department does more with less. I see the Recreation Department does more with less. And there's still a lot more budgets to go. I we can't afford to raise in our taxes. We need to see more businesses into town. We need to see more help in paying our taxes. We're losing personal property tax. We're losing real estate taxes with closed businesses. Just can't do it.
Thank you. Does anybody else have an interest in public hearing for the capital improvement budget? Seeing none, we'll close that public hearing. Next item, Twyla.
Is under public hearing, Chapter 24, Article 1, Fireworks Ordinance.
I'll open the public hearing for the fire.
Larry Fillmore from Lisbon. I read the article in the Sun Journal today, and it was interesting. Are we really being good neighbors by approving the fireworks ordinance, which allows sales of fireworks in Lisbon when our neighboring towns are banning them citywide? Are we really setting a good example? I mean, are we doing our neighbors right? Gina has been preaching about we need to step up and help our neighbors and all this and that. If they're all banning it, why are we going to sell them? The second thing on that is, how is this demonstrating of being proactive in preventing problems for the police and the fire department? I don't understand that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don Fellows from the Lisbon side of things. I'm not speaking for the planning board, but the planning board was given the ordinance to look over basically one night, and we did. Although we didn't take any formal votes on it, we looked it over. We made some grammatical changes, requests that should appear in the minutes that we accept this week. One of the things that was discussed then was a possible change to the law, for the ordinance, that would require a permit. And in that process, we didn't do much then. We didn't vote on anything, but I wrote something that just to be considered if you would want to put that type of thing in, or whether you want to bounce it around. So if you'd like me to read that, I will. If I'll give you a copy of it too, if you'd like that.
If you have a moment, go ahead. Appreciate that.
Okay, I'll give you a copy. It's basically deals with Section 1, which is the items where it says Section 11B, prohibition, and then there's 4 letters under it. This amendment would take the place of where it says district restrictions, none, and it would substitute consumer fireworks permitting. And the logic for putting it in that place was that there didn't seem to be a lot of reason to have that in there in the first place, if there were no restrictions on districts. So in substituting, the following amendment would say, consumer fireworks permitting. Any person who wishes to discharge consumer fireworks within the town of Lisbon shall obtain a permit from the town office and shall affirm by personal dated signature complete understanding of and willingness to comply with the restrictions and prohibitions imposed by this ordinance on the discharge of consumer fireworks by any person. An issued permit shall be valid solely for the specific dates requested. No permit may be issued more than 2 weeks prior to the event, and each permit is restricted to a single location within the town limits, except such location as may otherwise be limited or prohibited elsewhere in the ordinance. A lot of words, but, and the reasoning for issuing the permit for specific dates only is because basically to not allow a permit to be issued just July for next Christmas. And only one in every 6 months. What did I say? No, only one in 2 weeks prior to the event. And the reason for that was when you get to New Year's, there's actually 2 dates in there that could be permitted at one time. That was basic thoughts behind it. It could be changed. It could be added differently. It could be changed so that you could do permitted fireworks on a birthday celebration if you wanted to, but Anyway, I just offered that. I also would like to say that I know, I'm kind of up in the air whether I'm for or against this thing. I have experience with the state of Hawaii. I've gone there all the time to visit my son. And they had no ordinances at all restricting fireworks, and they burned a lot of houses down. And because it's an Asian culture, and the Asian culture does fireworks to celebrate, somebody's birthday, anniversary, child was born, dog had babies, whatever. They've got a reason to have fireworks. But most of the fireworks happened on New Year's, and particularly on New Year's. And there were no restrictions at all, and people go and buy just tons of fireworks everywhere, and string up ladders and set them off. So they finally said, the whole state, particularly Oahu, developed an ordinance that restricts them to permit only. So you go and get a permit from the town office, and it allows you to have 5,000 fireworks. Can't have any more, but you can have 5,000, and believe it or not, they set less houses on fire that way. I do have some neighbors that aren't here tonight, but they are really, really solidly against any kind of allowing fireworks in the town at all. They think that fireworks quite often are accompanied with alcohol and not in the best shape or condition to do it. And that may be an overkill thought, but that's theirs. And do you want to copy this?
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you, Don.
Good evening. Roger Cody, Lisbon Falls. We have our legislators in Augusta that are lobbying and trying to get their laws passed so they can carry firearms in Augusta. And we're worried about fireworks in Lisbon. I mean, let people live. If they want to have fireworks, let them have their fireworks. I don't think that any legislation that we put on the books or any ordinances that we put out there are going to stop people if they want fireworks. They're going to have fireworks. Last year, the fireworks all around my house, there was nothing on the books of fireworks at that time. I just think that leave people alone, let them live. My opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I disagree. I'm Jim Thompson. I live on Ferry Road. I grew up in the South where we had fireworks all the time. And regardless of the injuries to kids, our legislature decided to grant the state to sell fireworks. So that's really nothing I can do about that. But what I can say is that regardless of the safety issues, if we sell fireworks in Lisbon and allow them in Lisbon, we're going to have numerous noise complaints. I don't know how the police are going to react. Is it a disturbance call? I mean, there's nothing to stop anyone from your neighbor or my neighbor from just deciding to let off fireworks at any time of the day. So I'm for a total ban on fireworks. As far as the permit goes, permit system, I don't know what special occasion other than the 4th of July or the 1st of the year you would need fireworks. And I realize that we do have fireworks in Lisbon and they do go off, but I think we're just going to be compounding our problems with illegal fireworks or fireworks at all, and compound the problem with the police department when they get complaints about fireworks. Thank you. Any other input for the public hearing on fireworks? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Next item, Twyla.
Is a public hearing for a special entertainment permit for Sandy Harkins, doing business as the Railroad Restaurant and Pub.
Open that public hearing. Anybody have any input? And this is for the Railroad Diner,
Yes.
Restaurant and Pub.
This is a renewal, right?
There'd be a renewal.
It's a special entertainment permit.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Okay. I misunderstood.
Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And next is going to be audience participation.
At this time, those in the audience who wish to address the council may come forward. Please use the microphone at the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Larry?
How did you know for? Larry Fillmore from Lisbon. After reading this request from Ryan Layton, I'm confused. Because this memo indicates the signs posted on Wing Street is weight restricted sign, when in fact it reads no through trucks. Apparently, this is meant to protect Pomelo Transport driving his tractor trailers in a housing area. Now, if the memo reads weight restrictions, that's the sign that needs to be posted. Okay? It's posted on Webster Road, and this, your ordinance and everything says Wing Street and Webster Road are posted year-round. And it mentions the weight restriction. That weight restriction is up on Webster, but it's not the same down there on Wing Street. That's the way. I don't see anything in here about no through trucks. I don't see anything in your original ordinance that says no through trucks. It's always been a weight restriction. But yet somebody posted a no through sign on Wing Street instead of the weight restrictions. So I don't know what you guys are doing. Don't have a clue what's going on there, other than we're trying to protect some. Second thing, why doesn't the town manager brief the people on the status of lawsuits and grievances pertaining to the town, both against the town and the ones the town files? According to Mr. Eldridge, there are 2 lawsuits and 5 grievances. How much in legal fees has the town been forced to pay defending these actions? It's a lot more than that 37 that is in our financial report, I am sure. And my last point is, we got the town manager's contract coming up. I've already stated my case pertaining to the town manager's contract on the Lisbon Reporter. If you really want to truly know where I stand, you can Google the Lisbon Reporter. Thank you.
Anybody else for audience participation?
Roger Cody, Lisbon. Last week at a workshop that you held here, there was discussion having to do with Open Bible Church wanting some changes done in the ordinances or what have you. I'd like to know what the difference is between not allowing them to do it because of spot zoning and the spot zoning that we did up on 196 for Mr. Kelly. I just don't understand. To me, spot zoning is spot zoning. What's the difference between one spot and the other spot? I'd like to have an explanation of that sometime in the future if we could. What ends up happening, in my opinion, when you spot zone, as we did for Mr. Kelly, you open yourself up to this. Because now you've opened yourself up to discrimination. If you're going to allow one to spot zone, then everybody in the town should spot zone. Anybody that wants to do anything in the town should get treated the same way. And if we're not going to do that, I think we're going to be opening ourselves to legal action. I know anybody that wants to run a business in Lisbon and you don't allow them to change the zoning, I think it could be pretty well argued in court after what we did this last year. Thank you.
Anybody else for audience participation? Seeing none. Next item, Twyla.
Is under the consent agenda. Any counselor wishing to have an item removed may do so now. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered next.
I'd like to have the postings removed.
Okay, anything else? All right, Order 2012-16, to approve a special entertainment permit and liquor license for Sandra Harkins, doing business as the Railroad Restaurant and Pub.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Order passed, 6-0. Next item is to approve the road posting.
What I'll do is I'll entertain a motion so we can have discussion on that for approving of the road postings for February 22nd, 2012 through May 1st, 2012.
I'll make a motion for discussion.
I'll second it.
So I just wanted to understand, as part of this, a couple things. Are we allowed to make special arrangements? I mean, sometimes there's emergency issues and stuff like that.
Yes, we
where
are allowed.
Road postings so that people can, and I also think if the weather's cold enough and somebody has to move something or transport something in some of these areas, can we work with the Public Works Department to make sure that temperature supports allowing us to do that?
Yeah, if it's a contractor or any commercial business or even private, have to move something, generally you call Public Works if it's cold enough, and generally what they do, they'll ask you what time you're moving it. Can you move it early in the morning before it starts to warm up, or later in the day if it's cooler?
But we don't want to limit it to just moving. It could be delivery.
Deliveries, yeah. Lots of times you see concrete trucks who need to get in and pour for foundations or any kind of work. That's usually
Oil trucks.
oil trucks, yeah. Just usually, we're very flexible on that.
I believe part of the posting rule actually does define the idea of if there's not water in the road or water in the cracks. I mean, if the road's still frozen, that the posting, there are some opportunities to
But
be able to drive.
who makes that decision and?
Yeah.
do
Public
the
Works.
Public
people,
Works would
right?
be,
So
yeah.
everybody, once we post the roads, everybody has to go
Obey.
through Public Works to determine whether or not they can travel on that road,
That's correct.
Yep.
right? And I mean, I understand we have to do it, but I always have heartburn with this because these people also pay their excise tax, they pay to travel on the roads, and we're limiting their ability to travel on the roads.
Especially this year, it's quite early.
Right, and so that leads to my next question. Since it has been good weather and we're posting them earlier, do we need to post them for as long?
Well, that's up to Public Works. Again, you do this, you give it a time frame, but they may remove the signs earlier if it stays warm and it gets really dry like it does later in the spring.
They don't have to come back to remove them?
No,
Why do
Nope.
they have to come to us to put them up then?
because you're the group that posts them. But
Right,
to take them
wouldn't
down,
we
you
be
don't
the
have
group-
to.
We're not the group to unpost them?
Nope. You haven't done that before, and I've never done it in any other town. Usually it's yeah.
But, I mean, I'm just.
Usually it's a call of the
of
Public Works Director or Operations Manager when they feel they can bring them down.
Yeah, my understanding is we authorize them to do it, and then it's their judgment whether, within that time frame, when they have them posted or not.
Any other discussion? See no discussion. Do we move to vote? All those in favor? All those opposed?
5-1, order passed.
Next item, Twyla.
Is under council orders, resolutions, and ordinances. Order 2012-17, the 2012-13 capital improvement budget.
This was presented to you in December, as required by charter. Gives you an opportunity to ask questions.
Make a motion to approve it as long as we admit we're not going to spend it all.
I'll second that.
And again, this is, as Steve said earlier, this is strictly it's a wish list. It's required by our charter that we actually determine a list of necessary improvements that we put on a capital plan, and the school does the same, and the schools is as much of a wish as ours. So, with that being said, is there any other discussions at all? All those in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Next item, Twyla.
Order 2012-18, Chapter 24, Article 1, Fireworks Ordinance. This is the second reading. roll call vote is required.
Would I entertain a motion for discussion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I mean, there's a lot of good points brought up. And I mean, I think we've talked about some of them. I'm torn because I'm concerned about all the things that were brought up. I mean, the state has made the law. So a bunch of communities have restricted it into certain areas. Some have banned it entirely. I tend to like the idea of going through a permitting process, but I think we'd have to work through a lot more details on how to, if we were going to invoke a permitting process, I think we would have to go back and kind of review this, because I think it would require other changes. We would have to change probably Section E under penalties, because now you have a permit that you're supposed to get, and I think we should, I don't know, I think it would require, if we're going to do permitting, because how do you get the permit? Because in here, we talk about the fire, right? The fire warden or whoever, based on it not being too, in a Class 3 burning.
Correct.
Arrangement. So you issue a permit 2 weeks in advance. How do I gauge whether or not that person should be able to let the fireworks off now, right?
Who's responsible to make that decision?
Exactly.
Yep.
Who's responsible, and how do you enforce, if I get the permit today, because my event's in 2 weeks, how do you enforce me that all of a sudden, in 2 weeks from now, it's not a good burn situation? So somebody has to come tell me. Do we send the police after them, the fire, and say, hey, you can't go do this? We have to keep track of a whole bunch of information in order to, I just think there's a lot of things that would have to be worked out against, to invoke that. I'm not saying I'm against doing that, but I think it would require more than what we could approve here tonight,
I agree.
if council's interested in that.
Roger?
Yeah, at one of our public hearings, we had the police chief here, and he didn't see any major issues with
It
it.
was a workshop one.
As a
right?
workshop,
Yep,
yeah.
Okay.
And he didn't see any major issues with it. So I'm kind of like go along with him, and we can, if it doesn't work, we can always revoke it. So if, I'm kind of like to go along and just get it over with and see how it works. If it doesn't work, and we have problems, then we can modify it.
Do you, as discussed tonight, I mean, with the original ordinance written, it would actually just be for certain nights. I mean, are you thinking the same thing as Mike, where we'd actually, should review the idea of allowing it for permit and possibly backing up and looking at that process
Yeah,
prior to making
I
a vote?
don't mind the permit part.
Lisa?
I think it's a good idea to take a look and, I mean, I already feel like there are a lot of questions about what sort of process we would use for permitting. So I think that we definitely need to look into that. And, I mean, it could be, I'm sure there are pros and cons to both, but I don't like the idea of just jumping into something and then seeing how it plays out, so.
I think we need to go back to the drawing board. We have to relook at the permitting process.
That's
Mark?
fine with me, yeah.
Yep. Now, if we, I guess my question to council is, being back to drawing board, does that mean the idea of allowing the planning board to look at it again? Or, I mean, where would be the proper mechanism to make this ordinance so we can review it?
I mean, I would offer up there, we have a Lisbon Community Policing Advisory Group, right, which deals with safety and everything like that. We've heard some of those concerns. Now that you have a draft structure of this, why don't you pass it on to that group to look at it, review it, and make recommendations? That group consists of the chief of police, right, and includes some school committee members, and then citizens from the public to go into that. So it might be worth sending it back to them now that you have a draft structure, and allow them to
Which would be neutral
work
of
on
the
it,
council.
provide them some input that you've heard and that we want them to investigate, and come back with some language. And they'll use our attorney as necessary to draft the appropriate language.
So that would be done independently from us. We wouldn't do a workshop with them. We'd actually just send them the information, allow them to work on
I
it.
think you could give them a list of the things that we're concerned with based on what we heard from the public and what we as councils are concerned with, and ask them to go try and see how they best feel to incorporate this.
Because in the past, I believe they've actually worked on other ordinances that we've
They
had
have,
concerns
yeah.
about, so.
And
They
then
did
would
the
we
noise
send,
ordinance and things like that, which might play into this based on some stuff we've heard tonight, so.
so then after they took a review at it, would we send it back to the planning board for,
Well, the planning board was just to get their eyes on it and make
Right.
recommendations. It's really a public safety ordinance. My question would be, we have to come back for a second reading,
Actually,
public
you have
hearing.
to start over again.
Start
So,
over, yeah.
Yeah.
it's a potentially substantial enough change from where we're at
So you have to go
tonight.
back to a first reading.
So you'd have to go
Correct.
back to a first reading, then another public hearing, and then
I think there are enough concerns by the, from us and from the public to warrant that.
So being said what it is, now, would we actually table this to a further?
I would be
date?
more than willing to withdraw my motion, and you could move
like
it to
that.
another agenda item.
Okay.
Withdraw the motion.
Are we all set there, Twyla?
Could I ask the
Yeah.
councilors to speak up a little bit? I haven't watched the meetings on TV for a while, but I know that, and I'm not young, but I'm having a hard time hearing, and I wonder if people watching, viewing.
She can't hear back there either.
We'll definitely try to
Lean
speak
into
louder.
mic.
Yeah. We apologize for that, 'cause sometimes we don't like to yell, but I think we need to speak up. So what we've actually just determined, just to make sure that everybody here, on the fireworks ordinance, we are actually going to send that off to the, what is the correct
Lisbon Community Policing Advisory Group.
advisory group to actually look at it and make recommendations to the council. And then we will start this process all over. So we didn't refuse it, we didn't approve it. We're basically just actually taking the time to make sure we do it right if we're going to do it.
So no, there are no objections from any of the councils, correct?
no objection?
Okay. Motion's withdrawn.
Next item, Twyla?
Order 2012-19, animal control contract. You have,
Chairman, could I offer that we take 18, we take 19, 20, and 21 as, roll them in as one motion?
Agree with that? What we are looking for is actually, we are agreeing on a contract for the animal control officer for Bowden, Durham, and Sabatis. The contract's all written and very, very compatible. I would be looking for a motion to accept these as written.
So move.
Second that?
All those in favor?
order passed 6-0.
Next item, Twyla?
Order 2012-22, the town manager's contract.
We actually, I would accept a motion so we can go for discussion.
I make a motion to approve the contract for another year.
I'll second.
Any discussion from council? No discussion?
I think we've all discussed that pretty well in executive sessions.
Yep. All those in favor? All those,
Order passed 6-0.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just
Yes.
like to clarify, we didn't discuss the approval of the
Right,
contract in
right.
executive session.
Yes.
That's correct.
We discussed the evaluation
Evaluation.
in executive session.
thank you. Next item, Twyla?
Is under other business, Lisbon Promotions Committee presentation. Ross Cunningham.
Scott?
Scott?
There's an open mic, so here I come. Folks, as you know, as part of my office, we oversee several community development efforts, which include the Moxie Festival, which we reported to you on last fall. And we come to you tonight with a report on sort of the other side of that coin, which is the Promotions Committee. And the Promotions Committee does a number of different events, which Ross will tell you about, throughout the year. And it really brings a lot of value, I think, to us as a community. It gives us an opportunity to come together and celebrate different events and things of that nature. I do want to make it clear to you, we would not have a promotions committee, and we would not have these events were it not for Ross Cunningham. Now, that's not to say there aren't others involved, and others make great contributions, but the one constant in all of them is Ross. So tonight, Ross is going to tell you a little bit about what he's been doing with that committee since it was first formed in 2009, I believe, and I'm going to run the projector, and Ross, it's all yours. Be patient with me now.
Well, while he's setting up, good evening. My name is Ross Cunningham, live in Lisbon Falls. I wanted to sort of take this opportunity to, is there a light switch, Scott?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry?
You said you'd take care of
I
that.
know, I did.
Ah, man.
Look at that.
Oh, can't get good help around here. Okay, excellent. Wanted to take this opportunity to sort of summarize, as Scott said, the last three and a half years. This committee came about, and my actions came about just basically when I sort of retired from the military, wanted to get involved in the town, and I said to Rosie, hey, how about we have a concert? And she said, okay, go ahead. And that was about it. And I discovered that the reason that I've had some success over the last 3 years, I sort of started shooting first and asking questions later, and things just kept happening, and nobody was objecting, and I figured it was time to come step forward and say, hey, this is what I do, and hope that nobody objects. So this is an opportunity for me to sort of go forward and explain what we've been doing over the last several years and where I think we can go from here with some help from the town and from some volunteers that have been very helpful. Next slide, please. Tonight I'm going to try and keep it quick. I know that you guys have been here for a while already. I'm just going to go over the background. I'm going to cover our mission statement. I'm going to cover the 4 events that we do have: the Father-Daughter Dance, the concerts in the park, the Harvest Festival, and the Very Merry Main Street celebration. And I'll discuss briefly a road ahead from here. Thank you. We did start as a subcommittee of the Lisbon Revitalization Committee efforts. That was in 2009 from Rosie, who started that up, and there was all sorts of town visioning sessions that talked about having more activity in town, more community events. So one of the 4 committees of the revitalization effort is a promotions committee, which does essentially what we do. It's at this point, it's the only committee remaining. The design committee did do the mural down on Main Street, which turned out beautiful, and I think we'd like to see more of that kind of stuff, but I believe the design committee doesn't have any members right now, so that's kind of hard to get anything accomplished there. Speaking of members, myself, the first 3 years, my primary co-key member was Chris Cornish, who runs Drapo's Costumes. She was a vital member of the committee, and she and I pretty much ran most everything. We did discover that we had very many people who are interested in being part of a singular event, but don't want to be on the guiding committee. So we're starting to find a way to sort of manipulate that and make that work to our advantage. I know we have some key folks. Recently, the last couple months, Hans himself has joined the committee, and I'd like to thank him for being here. And we had another couple folks who've joined up recently. So we're getting a little more support. Still, it's myself and 2 or 3 other folks who are trying to sort of guide where the committee goes from here. We do have very low volunteer turnout. I'd like to find a way, maybe with your assistance, I don't know how yet, but to up those numbers, because the more people we have, the more we can do. I have a lot of pride in the fact that no event has lost money. We have relied heavily on businesses and donations, but every event we've had has been a moneymaker for us, so we can improve the events and continue to go forward. So our mission statement, we strive to improve the business atmosphere and quality of life in the town of Lisbon through the creation of events and promotions of businesses. Pretty straightforward, not much to it. The events we use are the Father-Daughter Valentine's Dance, the concerts in the park, the Harvest Festival, and the Very Merry Main Street. Now, as I mentioned, this is restricted by the volunteer staffing we have. I would love to do 15, 20 events a year, but with 2 or 3 people, that's not going to happen. Some folks have come to me and said, hey, can we do a Veterans Day parade? Can we do this? Can we do that? Unfortunately, I've said no, because until I have a core group of at least 5 to 10 folks on a committee that are going to guide where this goes, I don't want to take on the added responsibility and do a poor event. That's not what we want to do. We want to do good events or no events. As I said, we have had some real success in getting folks to be a part of each event, folks who want to come back to these events specifically. Father-Daughter Valentine's Dance, this, and they're not going to like this phrase, but this I call our moneymaker, because we've held this our 3rd year this year, and we can't let enough people in the building. It is just the floodgates open at 5:30 when the thing starts, and there's people coming in the door all night long. We had over 100 couples this year. Next slide, please. It's co-sponsored with the rec department. It's held at the MTM gym. We just had our third year this year, about 2 weeks ago. We had over 100 couples. Hans worked the door, and he can tell you they just kept coming. They just, we try to sell tickets in advance and help people out by pre-buying and that kind of thing. Gives us a feel. Just as many show up at the door. It's an amazing event. Our cake this year was donated by Benoit's, which is great. Oh, I'm sorry, let me back up a quick second. Over 100 couples means over 100 little girls who are looking for flowers, hairdos, clothing, and this just, I don't think we have a florist in town right now. I'm not positive, but this kind of, the hair salons are making a killing on this day because every one of these girls has gone down and gotten their hair done. And several of them have stayed open past noon, which is traditional on a Saturday. They're staying open till 1, 2 to get the extra hairdos in. So, I'm really proud of this event as it does generate revenue for our local businesses, and it gives the fathers and daughters a chance to get out. The first year, we did buy a DJ and kicked him to the curb, and I've been doing it ever since. So instead of paying him $500, I've got a laptop and a PA system, and it's not hard. So it's one of those things where we find ways to make these work and not cost us an arm and a leg and still have a great time. This year, we raised over $1,300. This money does go back to the committee to use for future events, and we'll get to that in just a second. And this is one of the events I was referring to where we have key individuals who want to volunteer. All the moms who want to come out and see their daughters dancing, they tend to come and want to help out, and they serve the cake and they serve the punch. And it's great to have that key group of folks who want to come out. Next slide, please. The concerts in the park, again, this is how I first got involved, was saying to Rosie Bradley, hey, let's have some outdoor concerts. And she said, sure. If you flash back to 2009, it was the leftover Moxie stage that got pulled out of a barn and set up in the grass out behind MTM, and it was a Craigslist ad for free bands. Anybody who wants to come play for free on a Sunday night, come see us. And that was the first year. And to think that you've gone from that to this, who's a national recording artist out of Boston who played last summer, we've come a long way in 3 years. We're entering our 4th year. We're really excited. Currently, I am turning away musicians. I'm getting phone calls and emails on a regular basis from bands around the state who want to come play here, and I have to say, no, I've only got 7 shows. So, we do our best, next slide, to make sure that we do various genres. We have something different every week. We have one country week. We try to have a big band week. We try to have something unique. Last year, we had a 50s band with a car show, sort of mix it up a bit. Last year, we got sort of hammered by the weather. The last show was the hurricane. If you remember, we didn't get them. We did actually use that band last year again at the Harvest Festival, which was great because they still wanted to come play. Last year, we were supported completely by local business sponsors. And I can't say enough about the small businesses in the town wanting to step forward and support this event. They have done an amazing job. Last year, it was $2,900. That paid for the bands, paid for an increase in marketing. We were able to support the bands and give them the money they needed to come out and play. And we did great. We did great. We were able to do some stuff on the pavilion last year. We had lighting. This year, we plan on adding a back wall to it and doing some landscaping around it based on some of the money we raised at the Father-Daughter Dance and some other funds that we'll raise through this series. This year, because of the way Moxie falls, we only have 6 shows. So Scott and I put our tiny brains together and said, hey, what if we had a Saturday night Lisbon Concerts in the Park show during Moxie weekend? So we have booked a relatively large band in New England called the Mallet Brothers. I don't know how many of you know Dave Mallet is a very well-known folk musician in the state. His sons have started a country rock band, and they're very, very good. They're playing all the way down to New York City and back up, and they're playing Saturday night at Moxie on the pavilion stage. So we're really excited to have that one. And I don't know if you want to top into that at all or add from the Moxie side of the house. So that's the concerts in the park. I think it's ticking along. I think last year we had about 100 folks at every show. We like to have 200, 250, and we've seen that for some of the bigger names. But our average is about 100. Part of it's getting the word out. We did try some new marketing techniques last year that didn't necessarily work, but we're trying something different every year, trying to get the word out and get people to come to Lisbon. Next slide, please. The Lisbon Harvest Festival. If you want to know how to exhaust yourself very quickly set up a harvest festival in October and bring 5 volunteers with you and say, hey, we're going to have games and fun, and let about 150 people show up. And we got killed the first year. Next slide, please. It was started as a farmer's market, bake sale, kind of fun activity with a live band, again, on that flat plywood stage that we had borrowed from the Moxie stage. And we really got killed. We spent about 3 hours just running around, taking money and handing out baked goods and all that stuff. Looking back at that, we decided very quickly we needed to do something different with this festival. What we did was we found a way to get all of the nonprofit groups in town together for one day. They all bring their own staffing, they run their own events. All we do is organize it and sell tickets. They get to keep, at the end of the day, all the revenue they generate for themselves. They come back to us with their tickets. We give them the cash for their tickets. We make a small amount for every child who goes home with a ticket in his pocket. That's our money. So we don't make a lot of money, but we organize it, we put it together. I think last year our committee made $50, but over $1,400 was raised for everybody from LACO to the Girl Scouts to the school committee groups, all this stuff. And this is money that went right back into the community to help other folks with other committees. So a really, really good event, I think. We've had some great children's performers the last couple of years. We had Rick Charette 2 years ago and saved some money last year, and I think we wound up with a better performer in Wayne from Maine. And he did a great show, very active, a lot of fun, involved all the kids. And this has been a big event as well. Our final event is the Very Merry Main Street. We are entering our fourth year next year. We just had our third year. And this is our most business targeted event. This one specifically is designed to put bodies in stores within the footprint that we have for that year. Our first year it was simply Main Street. This past year we expanded out to include Miller's, Variety Plaza, that area, and up a little bit. And our hope is to move forward in the years to come to try to expand it to more area. Again, last year was a huge success thanks to the help of many volunteers who got involved, improved the event. We relocated the tree lighting celebration behind MTM, and I think there were more people there than I'd seen at any of the other events. The North Pole, set up mostly by Jessica Malloy here, was a great success. The kids had a wonderful time. Santa was in there giving photos inside the MTM gym. It really was a winter wonderland in there. And then we did a punch card where if you went to a certain number of stores, you got to enter it into a raffle. The data from that showed that every business that was on that punch card had 40 bodies walk in the door, and that's the average. So if you're a small business downtown and you got an extra 40 bodies that night, you've been given the opportunity to do something with those customers. And that's all we can do. So all we can do is put people in the door and let the business owners take it from there. But I think that was a huge success. Expanding each year, we'd like to do better lighting on Main Street, maybe some overhead stuff. Again, small steps. We want to increase our footprint outside of just the Falls and Millers and carry it up to the Midtown Plaza if we can, and start sort of slowly grow this to a town-wide event, but we do have to do it in stages because otherwise we're going to get overwhelmed. Improved publicity, that comes with cost. You can't advertise out there for free. You can do it social networking, that kind of thing, and we've increased that a bit. We've added a Lisbon Promotions Facebook page in addition to the Lisbon Concerts in the Park Facebook page, sort of trying to get folks just to know what's going on in town. So that's the Main Street celebration. These are just a quick sample of the 4 flyers we use every year and the pavilion, and the question is where do we go to from here? Do we add any events? Do we continue forward? Next slide, please. One of the things I think is most important for us is to build better business relationships, and I know that Scott's department's working hard on trying to come up with a consolidated list and a way to reach every business with an email blast or with a mailing list or some sort of consolidated way to contact every business we have in town. And we're working on that, and I think that would be a big help. We'd like to increase volunteers. If we can do that, we can increase some more events. We can have, a 4th of July party. We can have, any number of things you can think of. We can come up with it if we have some more bodies. I don't know if there's any way to get some sort of incentive out there to get volunteers. This town is full of volunteers because we're full of volunteer opportunities. There's lots of them. And people do step up to the plate, and it's just hard to try to get our share of that for these events. Personally, I'd like to have some more better documentation and organization for us. I'd like to have folders that say this is how you run one of these events. I'm going to get tired of it eventually. and I want to be able to hand these off to someone. Sorry, that's the truth. I'd like to increase our social networking presence. Right now, we have about 350 people following the Concerts in the Park page, but if we can get that to grow some more, I think you'll find people coming from as far away from Portland to see some of these shows. If we can get better numbers, bigger bands, that kind of thing. I do feel very strongly that we will always have an opportunity for the local bands to be playing on that stage. I'm not going to outgrow that, so we'll always have 1 or 2 shows here a year from local folks. I want to finish up the pavilion. As I said, I want to put a back wall on it, put a roof inside. Keeps the pigeons out of the rafters. That'll help. And then also I want to continue our outstanding relationship with Scott and his whole department. The folks here have been very, very helpful. So that's the promotions committee in a nutshell. Are there any questions?
Great job.
Yep.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Gotta say thank you, Ross, because you kind of go through the full season, because in the Main Street, it's bitterly cold, in the middle of winter, to the idea of concerts in the park where people are just dying to get underneath the tents because it's so hot out, you know,
Right.
so you definitely go the full season, there's no question about it. We thank you for that, because I don't think I've ever gone to any of those events and not seen happy people, you know, it's.
Good. That's what we're hoping for.
It's nice to have.
All right.
Any other questions from council, or?
Just one critique.
Sure.
No red backgrounds in
Yeah.
presentation.
We learned that, Counselor, thank you.
I actually wore the red shirt to match. I thought it was right. Fair enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ross.
Are you all set, Scott?
I am good, thank you.
You are.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Twyla?
Next item, the Finance Director's Report.
Okay. So you all should have in front of you my finance report for the month of January. Looking at the revenues, January brought in just over $167,000. This is primarily due to excise tax collection at $69,000 and state revenue sharing at $80,000. Excise tax is just over 52% for the month. Last January year-to-date collection was at 51%, so we continue to be right on track with excise tax. State revenue sharing year-to-date collection is 61%. This is also looking to be right on track with our budget projection of $830,000. And as I always say, we will continue to monitor that account because it does change. That's really all I have for revenues for the month of January, unless you have any questions for me.
Any questions on revenue?
Okay, moving on to the expenses. Total expenditures for the month of January were $499,424. Of this, 78% or $388,000 was related to personnel services, which includes your wages and benefits. Contractual services made up approximately 17% at $87,000. This is primarily due to waste disposal fees of $28,000, winter public works of $22,000, streetlight expenses of $8,000, some minor technology expenses, and town building expenses of $11,000, which is where we pay for our heating, electricity, and telephone. Repair and maintenance or supplies made up 9% of total expenditures at $44,000, and this is primarily due to the gas fuel purchases. These are offset by a negative 4% in grants, which is money we received in the amount of around $16,000 for the crime analyst grant position and the police officer reimbursement accounts. That is all I have for expenses, unless you have questions for me.
Any questions from council?
I just have one, and I think we've talked about it before. It's not big dollar value items, but we got a bunch of supplies and repair and maintenance lines that are kind of already expended this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to make sure we got something in place to, because I'm sure they probably still need to spend some money, but
Yeah.
I'm sure we got something in place to offset that expenditure within those accounts.
Yeah, there may be a few more expenses on some of those, but most of those are annual things, either through contracts or amounts that come up. You had asked me last month about a contractual service under the town engineer, and I had told you I would get back to you. That related to some AvCog mapping services that were utilized. I'm assuming that were unforeseen. So that is why that account is over expended. But other than that, everything is really, we're no worse for than where we have been in past years, so nothing that raises concern. On a quick side note with tax collection, we have collected 50.5% or 4.8 million of the total tax commitment. And this is slightly below last year where we were 51.9% collected. So, and that's all I have for you.
Any questions from council?
Yeah, I have one question on the fire department budget. I see that we're over in, this is 02-205 in 5300, the operating supplies. I see we're over expended by $9,000. You know what that is?
Yeah, those, I had alluded to in past months that I need to sit down with Sean and we need to review some of his R&M expenses because some of them do relate to truck replacement items that could fall under capital. So it's just a matter of needing to sit with him and journalize some of those things to reclass them. And that's not uncommon.
So those would be actually capital purchases, you're saying, or they're put in the operating supplies?
It'll just shift down to
Okay.
capital. Yep.
All right.
All set, Mark?
Yep.
Everybody all set? Thank you.
Thanks.
Bryla, next.
Town managers reports, the next item.
I have nothing really of substance to talk about. All department heads were finalizing some of our budget recommendations coming up, and that's really where we're spending a tremendous amount of our time to get ready for the 20th, and we're monitoring the revenue sharing, and we haven't seen anything new come up from the Department of Tax and Revenue, but we're watching that, just hopefully have some numbers before we make the presentation of what we can expect for the revenue sharing. And there's some bills before the legislature. We haven't seen the language yet, but the Legislative Policy Committee is watching that pretty closely. We're hoping that we don't see any change, at least to hold it flat. An increase in revenue sharing would be nice, but as revenue sharing, or revenue is down in the state government, so I'm not hopeful on that end.
Mike?
Yeah, I thought I heard or saw some traffic on the fact that the school might get more funding.
That was money that Rick had anticipated. He actually anticipated around 230,000. The number that came out of the state was, I think, just under 287,000. So that was a number he had already projected he was going to get.
For that,
Yeah, he'd already planned for that.
So they're down from the 340 down to around 290 now. So I mean, it did help, but he is already calculating some of that.
He's got some targets. He and I have talked about both of our budgets back and forth to kind of keep in touch with each other where we are. And he is waiting for his committee to kind of make some recommendations on areas where he can reduce it, and he's hoping to have a lower number, but he's not sure where they are yet.
All set, Steve?
Yep.
Next item, Twyla?
Is under appointments, Order 2012-24, resignation on the Trail Commission.
Make a motion to approve Jason Young's resignation.
Second it.
Any discussion on this, or?
Do we know why?
Yeah, he just has some time constraints and wanted to back off for a while. I think once things change for him, according to Ryan, he will probably come back.
And from his letter, it sounds like he's willing to serve at a later date, so before we vote, I do want to thank him for the service that he has done, and hopefully he comes back and serves on another committee.
And we're going to post for an opening?
Yes. Yep.
Is that
Has
the...
anyone shown interest yet?
I haven't heard of any applications coming in, but we'll beat the bushes.
Take a vote. All those in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Next item?
Counselor Communications.
Any opportunities?
I'm all set.
That's it.
I'm good.
You all good?
All set.
I guess we're all set with that, Twyla. I think we'll actually move through. Just one thing I will add is, as we went through the town manager's contract through this year, I mean, it was something that the town actually, the council actually spent quite a bit of time on, and we wanted to make sure that we're evaluating all the town's needs, and I think we are moving forward in the right direction, and I think the vote today reflected that. So it wasn't a quick 10-minute decision. It was definitely, we made sure that we have Lisbon's best interest at heart. Next item.
Is under executive session, orders 2012-25 to go into executive session per 1 MRSA Section 4056C, acquisition of real property, 16 Lisbon Street.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
Yeah, we'll go in the back room. We shouldn't be too long, and I don't believe there'll be any votes, but we are going to be moving after to adjourn and go into a workshop.